And so my life changed at that moment, before I even knew anything. Well, there's two ways to test for prostate cancer. There is the PSA, which, by the way, when I'm making phone calls, the first thing I said to Dr. Rosner was my PSI. I said PSI. That's how ignorant I was. I didn't know what it was. And what it stands for is prostate, a little nervous, so prostate, help me out, anybody? Well, prostate specific antigen, right. It's not that hard. Okay. So,
I can't never remember the name.
that's why you say PSA. Okay. So, my PSA was 26. The normal male's PSA is 0 to 4. And it's important to get an initial baseline, especially 40. You know, they say 50, but I would say 40. Initial baseline, so that you know, so they can keep track of it. And then it becomes easy to look at the progress of the prostate, and in my case, the cancer. But I didn't have anything to go by. I'd never had a PSA previously. And mine was 26, and 0 to 4 is normal. So I went to Syracuse to the doctor. He used the word concerned, and I had to go back the next day to have a biopsy, and they actually did a scan of the bladder, and that was the toughest 2 hours of my life. Not only was it uncomfortable, and it hurt, but you know, you're sitting there thinking, you know, how's this going to turn out? How's this going to turn out? And getting back to my point, there's two ways to test. The other is, unfortunately, is a digital exam. And the digital exam is a rectal exam. The doctor feels for abnormalities of the prostate. And it's important to have that too, because once he's identified your particular prostate and how it sits in the body, it's walnut size and the texture and what have you, he can find from there if there's been a change. Now, getting off course, I'll go back to a conversation that I heard with a group of coaches in the weight room, and they're talking about our annual physical exams and making comments about this, and I'm just kind of sitting back thinking, you know what, I haven't had one of those in a while. Well, you know, that would be like me hearing that and not doing something about it, and you hearing something tonight and not doing something about it. That was a mistake on my part. And I don't want anybody else to make the mistakes that I made concerning prostate cancer. If you catch prostate cancer early, stage 1 or stage 2, it's 100% curable. It's 100% curable. And that's how most men catch it. And with the information out there today, that's where it should be. Mine was stage 3B at least, and it's since I had my prostate taken out, and they removed 70 lymph nodes. 3 lymph nodes were positive for cancer, and there's invasion in the neck of the bladder, and which means it's stage 4. It's on the move. The good news about prostate cancer is PSA is so indicative of the disease that they can monitor flare-ups with me, and if it's on its move, if it's on the move, and where it goes. Before I go any further, I am under the understanding that I'm healed. I believe that God has healed me. I've asked Him to heal me. God does not lie. It says in the Bible that ask and you shall be healed. By His stripes you are healed. And I'm under that understanding. I really am. I couldn't stand here today if I thought that my stage 4 prostate cancer was going to kill me. I couldn't. Along those lines, the first month that I was diagnosed, I couldn't look at myself in the mirror. I have a 28-year-old son and a 24-year-old son and a beautiful wife. And I got a lot of things I want to do. But it happened to me, and I was embarrassed. I was embarrassed. Don't let that happen to you or anybody you love. If you had any idea, and at least one person here does, about the next few months from my diagnosis as to what I had to go through as a man, the one thing we don't want is the other side of not the PSA, but the other side. Well, believe me, I'd take that exam every day for the rest of my life not to have gone through what I've gone through since. No other way to explain it. And no matter how pumped I get and how positive I get, because I'm going to beat it, because I can do a lot better job here on earth for God than I can in heaven by giving this message. But I'd give anything, not to have to go through this. And have to worry about my sons. This morning, my son was home from New York City, works in New York City. Happenstance, I'm being treated in New York, my son lives in New York. Well, boy, what a coincidence. And so many things that have happened along the way in my path, which has been a short path. In some ways I feel guilty being here talking to you about this, and I'm only a few months into my disease. I haven't paid the price yet, maybe. That's just my own feeling, my own meekness inside. But, I'm doing this because I feel like it's my charge. I've been giving this cross to bear, and I want to do the most with it. So, anyway, went upstairs, kissed my son goodbye, thanked him for being here. Excuse me. And I got emotional on the way down the stairs. My wife said, "What's the matter?" You don't want to say goodbye to your loved ones. Not on an individual, I'm not on a one-day basis, but certainly not on a forever basis until it's your time. And that's the emotional part for me. Fortunately, being a born-again Christian, I've accepted Christ as my Lord and Savior. I'm proud of that. I've asked Him for healing, and I've also asked Him for the power of the Holy Spirit. And all those things are said in the Bible. So I know all those things exist. But that doesn't mean I still don't have to fight the fight. And there's a lot of work to do. And getting this message out about prostate cancer is important. Where am I now? I'm taking the hormone treatments now, which shuts down the activity of the testosterone in the body, because prostate cancer feeds off testosterone, and that's why it's a male-specific disease. The first couple of weeks after my prognosis, I took an inhibitor, testosterone inhibitor, and my PSA went from 26 to 13. So it's an indicator that my disease is driven by testosterone. Well, when I switched doctors, I went to Memorial Sloan Kettering. I ended up in one of the best hospitals in the world. From a guy recommended me there, a guy I'd never met. Coincidence? Well, I don't believe that. Kirk, what's going on? My son just started work for him a month ago. So I told him what I've told you already. He says, I know the president of the board at Sloan Kettering. Let me give him a call. I'm thinking, you got to kid me. You have to be, this is one of the premier hospitals in the world. The next day he called me at 9 o'clock. Kirk, have you heard back? No. And it was 9 o'clock. And the phone rings on the other end. I said, wait, Mike, let me take this. Well, Sloan Kettering telling me to set up my appointment and then coming down to Sloan Kettering. And the whole process, I was pushed to the front of the line. I'd walk into a waiting room like this, and it seemed like I was always the next person called. I don't get it. I didn't understand it. But I think you know how I believe it's happening. So many things. I called a doctor friend, not even a doctor friend. I'd met this man once. and I put him in my phone because I wanted his son to play in a tournament with me this summer. His name is Dr. Davi Sacco, and he's a retired anesthesiologist. I've met him once. He was in my phone. Dr. Sacco, you don't know me, here's my situation. Kirk, I'm a retired anesthesiologist. He says, I'd love to help you. You've been nothing but good to my son. I know I can't play with you this summer, so that's not why I was in my phone. He said, but let me make some calls. And he told me, he said, do not let the guys I was with in Syracuse take this on. Go somewhere else. And once again, why? Pointing me in the direction of Memorial Sloan Kettering, New York City. It's supposed to be the best in the world. Well, how do a guy from Carthage, New York, end up at Memorial Sloan Kettering and going through what I'm going to have to go through? How could I possibly make it? I mean, the cheapest hotel in the city is $250 a night. But you know what? I told him we'll mortgage the house. Turn the clock back 3 years, and college buddy, 25 years ago. Last time we talked. He needed a favor. His son was an aspiring lacrosse player, and he needed some help. I said, hey, Tim. His name was Tim Tyner. Bring him up to my wife and I. He'd stay with us for a couple of weeks this summer. So he'd come to my camp. Says, we'll take him to champ camp with us. I'll take care of him. Kirk, you do that for me? Tim. And, you know, once buddies, always buddies. No problem. My wife took me. My wife loved him. Little did I know, the guy had now, he's making $650,000 a year, and he's the head of international relations for Citibank in New York City. And he was a phys ed major at Portland. Tim, here's my situation. Kirk, remember I told you about my apartment in New York? No, what do you mean? He says, it's yours anytime you need it. He owns a place in Bedford, New York, a mile from Martha Stewart's house, which tells you what kind of place he's got. And he said, I'll go home on the weekends. You know, actually, I'll go home any night you need the apartment. Coincidence? Maybe, but I don't think so. So that's where I've been staying most of the time when I go to New York. I found out that taking the train's easier than taking the plane, and usually faster, and a lot less hassles. So we spend a lot of time on the train. Usually one of my family members will go with me, spend a lot of time together. My wife and I have never been closer, as you can imagine. The boys and I talk about anything and everything, which maybe didn't happen before. I've heard cancer survivors, and by the way, I'm a cancer survivor because apparently as soon as you get diagnosed and you're still here, you're a cancer survivor. So I'm a cancer survivor. Cancer survivors will talk about drastic changes that went on in their life. And so I started reading things, and I've been scared to death by books. You know, there's books that says that my cancer will go to my bladder, to my lungs, to my brain. And I asked the doctor last time I was there, Dr. Cox, the nicest man. I said, Doc, I said, this gets me. How's it going to get me? Is it going to do that? And he kind of said, no. He said, probably not. He said, prostate cancer, particularly my type of prostate cancer, likes bone. And we've been having good success with treatments, you know, when and if it gets to the bone. I said, we still got plenty of bullets in our holster. So, you know, there's a lot of hope from their standpoint. I'm going to let them do what they need to do. I'll let them take all the credit, even though I know who's going to get the credit. Simple as that. I started reading books, and I found out that too much red meat and too much white potatoes and lack of vitamin D are 3 indicators or things that might push toward prostate cancer diagnosis. Well, I got news for you. Growing up in an Italian family, we ate pasta one night a week, but the rest of the time we had white potatoes and red meat. And lots of milk. But the vitamin D they're talking about is from the sun. And we don't get enough sun up here. And they draw lines in some of the stuff I read, and there's a line in the U.S., you know, of course we're above it. We don't get enough sunshine here, we don't get enough natural vitamin D. I've been asking anybody and everybody, what should I eat? You know, how do I eat to beat this? Because I read a book called 50 Essential Things to Do If You Have Cancer. And in there includes changing your diet. And it's a book based on 16,000 cancer survivors, and 96% of them had a drastic change in the diet. Basically, it's give up the whites. You don't eat red meat. Obviously, that's not white. That's the veal. No white bread. No white sugar. No salt. And people say, well, what do you eat? Well, I don't think I've lost 25 pounds because of my cancer. I think it's because of my drastic change in the diet. You know, I eat fish. I never ate fish. And fish is great for you. It's got the omega-3s. And, I eat a lot of vegetables and chicken and turkey. I try to get organic when I can. I talked to nutritionists at Sloan Kettering. I talked to a nutritionist in the NBA who happened to be a friend of my son, just got hired by the Bobcats. And his dad is in a similar situation as me and been thriving, been doing well. So I've changed my diet. I don't drink milk anymore. It's also, dairy is not good for people who have prostate cancer. So I milk, water. In fact, the nutritionist I talked to at Sloan Kettering said he doesn't drink anything except water. If he feels like he wants orange juice, he has an orange, and so on and so forth. And I've also read about juicing, and he tells me that juicing takes too many nutrients out of the food. It's not going to hurt you, but it shouldn't be a substitute for something else. 50 Essential Things to Do If You Have Cancer. This is a great book, whether you have cancer or don't have cancer, to read because it tells a lot about prevention. But it also talks about a whole group of supplements that maybe you should take, the fish oils and the vitamin D's and the calcium. Especially now that I'm on the hormone blocker, much like a woman in menopause, I'm more susceptible to bone loss. So I need to be concerned about keeping my bone mass. But so I get up in the morning and I take a green drink with wheatgrass. What's wheatgrass? Well, Dr. Jonathan Coleman. And it's funny because I'm not afraid to ask anybody anything. And I said, just reach for the door. First time I met him, Doc, I said, you the best? And he said, that's what you're telling me. That made me feel good. Okay. The next time, Doc, eat to beat this? What should I eat? He said, well, you should eat for your heart. You know, so that's the main thing, eat for your heart. We all should, regardless. He said wheatgrass. Wheatgrass. Out of all the things, this one of the most prominent doctors in the world said I could do is have wheatgrass. So I've had wheatgrass every day since he said that. I take a scoop of wheatgrass and I mix it up in a green drink, and I drink it, and it tastes like maybe ground alfalfa. But the book I read, 50 Essential Things to Beat Cancer, said that it's not something you have to do, this drastic diet change. It's something you can do. And, you know, I've lived my life under the motto, if all it takes is hard work, I can do that. You know, if I've been successful, potentially has, it's not because I know way more than anybody else. It's not because, you know, I'm more blessed than anybody else. It's not because I'm lucky. It's because I work hard. I got that from my parents. I work hard. So I'm going to use that. I'm using that to work hard to beat this disease. And I'd like to also have the kids in this community know that cancer doesn't mean people beat cancer all the time. And I plan to be one of those people. And I'm going to give the glory to God. Doctors can take that. I'll give them, I don't care who takes credit. I'm just taking care of my wife and their two beautiful sons. I know that I jumped around quite a bit concerning prostate cancer. And I know what I know. I know what's happened to me. I know what's been said to me. I know what I've read. Last week I was perturbed to hear, maybe somebody else has heard that maybe even the American Medical Association, what do they know, that the PSA test may not be a great test to have. I don't know if anybody heard that. I don't know anything about anything. All I know is Kirk Ventiquattro, but I wish I would have known what mine was at 40. Because if I did, we'd have seen it go up, and I wouldn't have got to stage 4. You know, stage 1 and 2 is 100% curable. I don't know. You know, maybe they do know everything. Maybe I don't know anything. You might have decided I don't know anything already. But I do know this. I do know this, as I'll tell anybody till the day I die. If you're 40 years old, you better know what your PSA is. My sons need to know what their PSA is at 30, because it's obviously in their genes and directly. That's what I got, folks.